July 14th, 2025, a date that will be remembered on both sides of the world's longest undefended border. On this day, a crisis that had been simmering for months finally boiled over, sending shockwaves through North America. A chill grips the North American economy, not from weather but from crisis. Streets that once bustled with commerce now echo with uncertainty. In boardrooms and on trading floors, anxiety replaces confidence as the news spreads. Canada has begun to slow the flow of natural gas to the U.S., sending shockwaves from Washington to Alberta. The pipelines that once symbolized partnership now become instruments of leverage, their valves tightening with every passing hour. In the White House, President Trump is furious, seeing this as a direct challenge and betrayal. His administration scrambles to respond as advisors debate retaliation and the world's media watches every move. This move is the climax of months of escalating tensions, sparked by a presidential decree. Protests erupt in both countries, and politicians on both sides of the border trade accusations, each blaming the other for the standoff. Last November, Trump threatened a 25% tariff on all Canadian and Mexican imports, citing border security. The executive order was meant to pressure America's neighbors, but instead, it set off a chain reaction that no one could fully control. Unlike before, Canada responded with defiance, preparing for a trade war. Canadian leaders, under pressure from their own citizens, vowed not to back down, insisting that their sovereignty and economic future were at stake. For decades, the U.S. and Canada have shared more than a border. They've shared an economic destiny, especially in energy. Generations of leaders have celebrated the deep ties that bind the two nations, with trade agreements and cross-border investments fueling prosperity. Pipelines and power lines connect the two nations, fueling American homes and industries. These arteries of commerce have long been taken for granted, their importance only truly felt when threatened. Severing these ties was once unthinkable. Now, it's reality. The flow of energy, once a symbol of trust, has become a weapon in a high-stakes standoff. Pushed by U.S. tariffs, Canada has weaponized its most critical export. Trains and ships loaded with natural gas now sit idle as officials weigh their next move. It's a calculated risk, threatening both economies. Stock markets tumble, businesses brace for layoffs, and economists warn of a recession that could ripple far beyond the border. As gas supplies dwindle, a continent waits, asking, how did it come to this and what happens next? Ordinary families caught in the crossfire wonder how long they can hold out. The stage is set for a conflict that could plunge two allies into a bitter economic winter. As leaders gather for tense negotiations, the world watches, hoping for a breakthrough before the cold truly sets in. The crisis began with President Trump's America First trade policy, using tariffs as a powerful tool of leverage. Determined to reshape global trade in America's favor, Trump believed that tough measures would force other nations to the negotiating table. His administration argued that the U.S. had been taken advantage of for too long, and it was time to put American interests first, no matter the cost. In February 2025, the U.S. imposed a sweeping 25% tariff on all Canadian imports, aiming to pressure Canada on border security and immigration policy. The move sent shockwaves through both economies, as businesses scrambled to adapt to the sudden change. For Canada, whose economy relies heavily on trade with its southern neighbor, this was more than just a policy dispute, it was an existential threat. The U.S. is Canada's largest trading partner, and the new tariffs put billions of dollars and countless jobs at risk overnight. Canadian businesses faced sudden, crippling costs, factories slowed production, and layoffs began. Workers and families across the country braced for economic hardship, uncertain of what the future would hold. Prime Minister Trudeau condemned the move in a nationally televised address, calling it an attack on Canadian sovereignty. He promised swift retaliation, vowing that Canada would not be bullied or intimidated. Canada prepared its own set of tariffs, targeting politically sensitive U.S. industries like agriculture, manufacturing, and energy. The goal was clear: hit back where it would hurt the most, and force the U.S. to reconsider. But Ontario's Premier Doug Ford went even further, threatening to cut off vital energy exports to the U.S., a move that would have immediate and far-reaching consequences for both countries. The dispute quickly escalated from a trade war to an energy war, directly impacting millions of Americans. Suddenly, families faced higher prices at the pump and uncertainty about heating their homes. Trump gambled that Canada would fold under pressure, but he miscalculated the depth of Canadian resolve and the strength of their response. The standoff grew more intense with each passing day. Now, both nations face the fallout of a conflict that threatens to unravel a century of partnership, trust, and shared prosperity. The world watches, wondering if this gamble will pay off, or if it will leave both countries worse off than before. The U.S. and Canada's energy systems are deeply intertwined, more a shared circulatory system than a simple trade. For over a century, these two neighbors have built a vast invisible network beneath forests, rivers, and cities, quietly powering the world's largest economy and the lives of millions on both sides of the border. Over 70 major pipelines cross the border, delivering millions of barrels of oil and vast quantities of natural gas daily. These arteries stretch for thousands of miles, linking remote Canadian oil sands and gas fields to bustling American refineries and cities, ensuring a steady, reliable flow of energy. In 2024, Canada supplied 62% of U.S. crude oil imports, volumes that can't be easily replaced. No other country comes close to matching this scale, making Canada not just a partner, but a lifeline for American energy security. U.S. refineries, especially in the Midwest, are built for Canadian heavy crude. Switching sources would be costly and slow. Retooling these massive facilities would take years and billions of dollars, risking fuel shortages and price spikes for American consumers. The energy flow is mostly southbound. In 2021, Canadian energy exports to the U.S. were worth $112 billion. This trade supports hundreds of thousands of jobs from Alberta's oil fields to Texas refineries and underpins the economies of entire regions. Electricity ties are just as strong. Over 35 transmission lines connect the grids. These high-voltage links allow both countries to share power instantly, balancing supply and demand across vast distances and time zones. Quebec's hydropower keeps the lights on in New York and Vermont. Ontario powers 1.5 million American homes. Clean Canadian electricity helps the U.S. cut emissions and meet climate goals while providing affordable, reliable energy to millions. This integration stabilizes the U.S. grid, preventing blackouts during peak demand. When heat waves or cold snaps hit, Canadian power can flow south in seconds, keeping hospitals, businesses, and homes running. Now, this shared infrastructure is a battlefield. Political tensions and trade disputes have turned pipelines and power lines into points of leverage, with both sides acutely aware of their mutual dependence. Canada's threat to cut energy isn't symbolic, it's a direct strike at America's energy heart. Even a partial disruption could send shockwaves through fuel markets, electricity prices, and daily life. The very system built on friendship is now a weapon. What was once a symbol of trust and cooperation has become a source of anxiety and risk. The bond is being tested as never before. Leaders on both sides face tough choices: protect national interests or preserve a partnership that has powered North America for generations. If it breaks, chaos could ripple through the North American energy landscape. Disrupted supply chains, rolling blackouts, and economic turmoil could follow, affecting everything from gas stations to grocery stores. Every corner of the U.S. would feel the shock. From city skyscrapers to rural farms, the consequences would be immediate and severe. The stakes have never been higher. The future of North American energy and the daily lives of millions hangs in the balance. A Canadian energy cutoff wouldn't hit all U.S. regions equally. The Midwest, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, relies on Canadian crude for its refineries and auto industry. Without it, factories could shut down, gasoline and diesel supplies would plummet, and jobs would vanish. Illinois' massive refinery, critical for Chicago, would be crippled. The Northeast and New England depend on Canadian electricity, especially clean hydropower. Vermont and New York have long-term deals with Hydro-Quebec. A cutoff would threaten climate goals and force a return to dirtier, costlier fuels. For these regions, the threat is immediate blackouts, factory shutdowns, and soaring costs. The border, once a source of strength, is now a vulnerability. Millions are caught in the crossfire of a dispute they didn't start. For American families, the energy war hits hardest at home. Gas prices could jump 30 to 70 cents per gallon, especially in the Midwest. Heating bills would soar as natural gas supplies shrink, just as winter approaches. Businesses from bakeries to factories would face higher energy costs, layoffs, or price hikes. In Maine, losing Canadian power could cost residents $200 million more a year. The pain would ripple across the Northeast, undoing years of progress on affordable energy. This isn't just politics, It's a crisis felt at the gas pump, in monthly bills and on kitchen tables. Ordinary people are paying the price for a conflict spiraling out of control. Locked out of its main market, Canada is pivoting fast. The crisis has accelerated efforts to find new buyers, especially in Asia. China, Japan, and South Korea are eager for Canadian oil and gas. Canada is investing in pipelines and ports to reach the Pacific, aiming to reduce dependence on the U.S. If successful, this shift could permanently alter North American energy flows. The U.S. would lose its most reliable energy partner, forced to compete globally at higher prices. Canada is signaling it has options, and it's ready to use them. The rhetoric is fierce on both sides. President Trump frames tariffs as defending American jobs, refusing to back down. Prime Minister Trudeau vows to protect Canadian workers, promising strong retaliation. Ontario's Doug Ford threatens to cut off energy with a smile, escalating tensions. These public declarations harden positions, making compromise elusive. The war of words is fueling the economic conflict, pushing two allies further apart. The trade and energy war puts both nations at risk. Canada faces a potential 2.5% GDP drop, surging inflation, and massive job losses. The U.S. isn't immune. Regional economies, especially in the Midwest and Northeast, would suffer. Higher prices, job losses, and supply chain chaos threaten millions. The question, can diplomacy avert disaster, or will the rift become permanent? The world is watching as North America's energy partnership teeters on the brink. Generations of cooperation are at stake. The next moves will decide the future for both nations.